Across, we have Arvind Sanger joining us this morning. He is managing partner at Geosphere Capital Management to talk to us about how he's viewing markets. Arvind, great having you, and good evening from where you're at. Talk to us about how you're seeing the setup here. There's just so much uncertainty, and amidst all of this uncertainty, you're seeing US markets just move higher. I mean, the NASDAQ, of course, the AI trade is playing in a zone of its own. But outside of that, the Dow and the S&P look fairly resilient.
Well, I think it's more than the Dow and the S&P. If you look at the Russell 1000, the Russell 2000,
right.
The broadening of the market rally is actually quite notable. And then you have things like the transports, you have the banks, financials are doing well. So I think actually it is from a health of the market standpoint, the US market. It is encouraging that it's not just the narrow Mag 7 tech-led rally. And the fact that the tech stocks are taking a little bit of a breather, in my opinion, is not a bad thing for the market. It's a good thing because you're seeing a broadening of the economic optimism, hope that an expectation that Fed is going to do maybe 2 or 3 cuts this year. So I think the economic data seems to be reasonably on track, and earnings, I guess we'll find out soon how the earnings play out. But I think there's a growing optimism about the breadth of the recovery in the economy.
Okay, so that's looking optimistic. Arvind, hi, morning. We've got fresh comments coming in from Donald Trump, wherein he's saying that 14 oil companies are going to be convening today to talk about what the future of the OMCs are going to be in the US with regard to Venezuelan oil. And in fact, he's also said that oil companies are going to be spending at least $100 billion in Venezuela, and they're going to be taking trillions of dollars worth of oil. Talk to us about how this impacts the global order in terms of the crude supply we have right now, OPEC, non-OPEC included, and what could the pricing look like once this sets into motion?
Well, first of all, don't believe everything you hear from President Trump. I was at the Goldman Energy Conference last couple of days where, Chris Wright, the Energy Secretary, also spoke. It was, pretty clear that oil companies need security of contracts, framework, and, President Trump can't guarantee that he can throw his weight around right now. But the reality is that eventually the companies are going to have to deal with the government of Venezuela, and whether this current government or a future government, how will things play out? And frankly, President Trump is not going to be in power 3 years from now. So nobody's going to none of these investments are going to pay off in the next 2 years. It's going to be year 3 and beyond if there is going to be any meaningful impact from oil companies going in, assuming they go in tomorrow. And Chevron was at this conference, and they've said it, in other interviews, that they are first concerned about the safety and security of their personnel, and then thinking about more investments is going to come down the road. So I think that President Trump talks a good game, but I would not be thinking, the oil markets are telling you, the oil markets have been up the last 2 days, or 2 out of the last 3 days, and they're telling you that there is no expectation in the oil markets of any flood of oil coming from Venezuela anytime soon.
Arvind, hi, morning. If you can also give us a sense of how how to watch this entire geopolitical play which is playing out, whether it's with respect to Venezuela or with respect to Greenland. How is it going to impact some of the emerging markets from an equities point of view?
Well, I think that if you are a country that is not completely fully comfortable with being aligned with the US, you have to think about kind of spending more on defense, diversifying away from US treasuries. Those are things that are going to go on. So I think that the world is becoming a much more, especially if Trump goes into Greenland next, because that shows that the existing world order is being replaced by might is right. And you could still argue that Maduro was not, had stolen the last election, was widely disliked, and there were many reasons why Maduro was not a legitimate president of Venezuela, even though he had held on to power at gunpoint. But if you go into Greenland, then you've kind of opened Pandora's box, in my opinion, in terms of global might is right political risk. And the implications, in my opinion, are fairly negative for market stability long term, because markets have operated under a backdrop of a world order which was stable, reliable, and you're going to see more unproductive investment in defense, in gold, in other things, as countries try to protect themselves from the whims and the uncertainty of a U.S. presidency, which was becoming more like an imperial presidency. So I think all of that is going to be somewhat negative for the U.S. And it could be negative for emerging markets. On the other hand, if the dollar gets hit, then emerging markets benefit. So I think it's very murky, and I don't think it's overall good for markets in general if the existing world order is being replaced by something we don't know what might come next.
Okay, so the uncertainty still continues to persist over there. But Arvind, all eyes today, yes, from the US are going to be on the jobs reports. But other than that, the US Supreme Court is going to be potentially giving a ruling or a verdict on the legality of Trump's sweeping tariffs. Any estimate on what we can expect to hear? Are you building in any expectations over there?
Well, I'm with the betting markets, and the betting markets are showing that 75% type of probability that the Supreme Court is going to rule against President Trump, against IEEPA, the tariffs that he's put using that under that authority. And if the expected does happen, then it's going to cause some temporary relief, maybe that things are good. But then I think President Trump has other tools, Section 301, Section 232, and others that the court is not going to rule against, which give him authority to do other things. And then, as you've been talking a little earlier, there's this bill making its way through Congress on kind of putting stiff tariffs, much higher tariffs, 500% on countries that import oil from Russia. I don't know if that'll make it into law, but if that comes into position, that would be hugely negative for countries like India, China, etc. So I don't know where things are going to go, but the tariff rule if it were just by itself, removal of tariff by the Supreme Court under the IEEPA authority would be definitely, in my opinion, a positive for markets.
Arvind, in this fast evolving world, therefore, where are you putting money?
Well, we are being somewhat cautious in terms of overall exposure, but we're putting money in in energy supply chain that is going to be needed for the AI data centers, and that is the macro things don't affect that. We are still bullish about metals. We're bullish about precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, all of that, because in this uncertain world, those are valuable. So we own mining companies in that space. So on a global basis, these are some of the places we play. When it comes to India, we're much more focused on domestic-facing industries and specific bottom-up companies in a variety of spaces, whether that's in power or autos or some NBFCs and a variety of bottom-up plays rather than making any big macro bets. But we are a little bit cautious and a little bit, on India too, sitting a little bit on the sideline, waiting for some of the dust to settle on some of these issues in terms of being fully invested.
Okay, Arvind, really appreciate your time this morning, and thank you so much for joining us. Lovely chatting with you.
Thank you.